Lightweight, waterproof, and tubeless. Episode 83 of the Juicebox Podcast is brought to you by OmniPod, the world's only tubeless insulin pump. This episode is with Ashley. She's the mom of a little girl with type 1 diabetes. Her daughter, Emerson, was diagnosed around 18 months. Ashley herself has diabetes. She had gestational when she was pregnant, and she has a lot of really crazy stories. I laughed a lot during this episode. I think I'm going to call it Diabetespalooza. At some point in the podcast, I'm going to crack up laughing really loudly. If that surprises you or shocks you in your ears, I'm sorry. And let's remember this while we're talking. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. I'm not a doctor. You have a doctor. Go talk to your doctor. If you don't have a doctor, get a doctor. But don't listen to me. This is a podcast. You get what I'm saying.
Well, my name's Ashley, and my daughter is Emerson, and she is 2. She was diagnosed when she was 18 months old, so we are actually coming up on it will have been 1 year on Saturday. So we're almost a year into this with her. And for me, I am about 2 months into my official diagnosis, I guess, and about 6 months into knowing what was going on with me, but not really being able to get a referral to an endo and get what I was needing, insulin.
Okay. So we've said a lot already. Let's figure it all out. So you are, okay. So let's start here with Ashley. Ashley's diagnosed when she's how old? I'm sorry, 18 months old?
Oh, I'm Ashley.
No, I'm sorry, Emerson.
Emerson. Yeah.
Emerson. I'm looking at your name and saying her. I'm sorry. Let's tell everybody right now, Ashley, this day is not gone the way we planned it as far as doing this podcast. So
just give up.
That's a lot's going to go wrong here, I'm pretty sure. Okay, so I'm sorry. Emerson was diagnosed when she was 18 months?
Yes.
And that was about a year ago. And then, but how long had you been kind of fighting with what was happening with you? So how old are you now, for instance? Let's say.
Okay, I'm 32.
Okay.
My husband reminded me a few weeks ago. I was like, no, I'm 31. I just lost a year of my life. What are you talking about?
You and I have a lot.
I'm 32.
You and I have a lot in common. I am forever purporting my age a year younger, and not on purpose. I just can't remember how old I am. And I'll go on for a while, and Kelly will finally say to me, I've been letting you say this for like 6 months, but you're 45, right? And I'm like, no, am I really? And so,
Exactly.
So
yes.
how long ago did you end up at a doctor wondering what was going on with you?
Okay, well, I can kind of go back from the very beginning. Okay, so when I was pregnant with Emerson, they diagnosed me with gestational diabetes. Mm-hmm. So that was pretty much the beginning of the end for us when it comes to diabetes. We have zero family history. I knew nothing about it whatsoever, just completely ignorant about the entire thing. So I go and, you do the oral glucose tolerance test. They call, they're like, you failed it. This is so weird. It's so crazy. You're not our, typical kind of, person that maybe would look like they would have gestational diabetes, but it happens. Hormones are weird. Come back in. I'm sure you're going to pass the 3-hour test. Pretty much everyone does. So I go back in for the 3-hour, and I failed the fasting and I failed the 1 hour. And so they were like, well, you can go home. You don't have to, no need to do 2 hours or 3 hours, because if you fail 2 of them, then you're diagnosed. So, okay. So I had gestational, supposedly, it was diet control. They put me on, a diet, eat this many carbs, this many times a day, check your blood sugar 2 hours later, make sure you're not over 140. So, I just did that religiously, and I was like super strict with it. I think I had one blood sugar over 140, and I accidentally popped a peppermint in my mouth without even thinking about it.
How long were you pregnant when the diagnosis came for you for the gestational?
It was when they do just the regular check at 28 weeks, I think, is when they normally do it.
First pregnancy, second, third?
Yes, first pregnancy. Yes.
Okay. Okay. And so you're controlling it with diet, and that's what they wanted you to do, and that's working well for you. And then does that change during the pregnancy?
No. So yeah, that was kind of one of the weird things. They were like, it's probably going to get more difficult to control as the pregnancy goes on, blah, blah, blah. And my numbers just kind of stayed the same. Like I would have fasting numbers that were just right around like 90 to 95. And then um, I was eating, they had me doing 30 carbs every meal, and I would be right around like 120, 2 hours after meals. So I thought, hey, that's great, like I'm doing fine. I never dreamed of checking my blood sugar like an hour after I ate to see how high I was actually spiking or anything like that. I just thought, okay, this is great. So then
You're following their instructions, and it seems to be within the parameters of what they've set
exactly,
up for you. Okay. Okay.
right. So time goes on, we have Emerson, everything's great, and then all of the, typical symptoms start to show up. And since I had gestational diabetes, I was aware that high blood sugars can cause like excessive thirst and excessive, urination and all that. So I noticed Emerson is just going through her diapers, just tearing through. I'm like, she's never soaked through a diaper, and all of a sudden she's waking up wet at night, and we'll go out to like run some errands a couple hours, and she's soaking her pants. I'm like, what in the world? So I told my husband one day, I said, I'm just gonna count the diapers. I'm not gonna throw away. Like when you come home, there's just gonna be a pile of diapers over here in the corner because this seems excessive, but maybe I'm imagining it. So the next day I did that, and I think I changed like 25 diapers that day, and they were all very wet. It wasn't like there was a tiny bit of wetness, and she was just desperately thirsty. I mean, I'm sure you remember. And so I actually still was just thinking, no, like I'm just being that mom that like thinks something's wrong with my kid, and it's not. Like that's gonna be so embarrassing to go to the doctor, and they're gonna say, so she's drinking and she's like peeing, like that's good, like that's how it's supposed to work. So I actually just dug out all of my stuff from when I was pregnant and was just going to check her blood sugar, myself. I was like, I'm sure it's nothing, and then I'll just feel better about it. So I checked, and she was 585, and
Not nothing.
oh, yeah. So pretty much once I recovered from seeing that number, it was 8:30 at night. So I called the ER, and I'm just talking. Is that okay? I'm just like telling the story.
Ashley, listen. Some people listen to the podcast and they're like, "I love it when Scott talks," and some people are like, "I love it when Scott shuts up." So I don't even know if I'm supposed to be here or not. I can't tell by the people I get the emails from. But you're doing a great job. If you were off track, I would stop you. Don't worry. So you're doing great.
Okay.
I do have a question before you tell me about the ER. Right. So,
yeah.
and if it makes you too sad, don't tell me. But when you test her blood sugar and it's well over 500, and she's 18 months old, and it's your first kid, and you're sitting wherever you're sitting in your living room doing this, do you just start crying? Do you flip out? How did you handle it?
Was there. I waited till my husband got home from work. Like I said, it was in the evening, and I fed. I was still going off of like gestational diabetes. So actually, I had fed her dinner, and I had waited 2 hours after dinner on purpose because I just thought, then I know exactly what number I'm supposed to see, and I'm sure it'll be fine. So we'd eaten about 6:30. So I check her, and my husband was holding her, and I, pricked her toe, saw that number, and I don't remember the next few minutes. My husband said that I just dropped to the floor.
Sure.
And the next thing I really remember is being on the phone with the nurse in the ER, and I told her I just checked my daughter's blood sugar. She's 18 months old, and her blood sugar is 585. I'm assuming I need to bring her in. And she said, oh, okay, so she has diabetes. And I said, well, clearly, yes. But no, she hasn't been diagnosed. Obviously she does, though. And she said, well, there's really no need to bring her in tonight. I would just call and make an appointment with our pediatrician. And I'm like, at this point, if I've gone as far as to check my daughter's blood sugar, I've been on Google. Like,
isn't it fascinating? That's such patently terrible advice.
Yeah,
I always ask people when they tell me stuff like this, like, where you don't have to tell me exactly where, but where about in the country do you live that? It would make me feel better if you told me you live like on the side of a mountain somewhere.
Okay, well, actually, this may make you feel better. We live in Arkansas, but it's a city.
I think if you told me you lived on Mars, I wouldn't feel better about that because that's someone should have said to you, yes, pack up everything you'll need to stay a couple of days and come over right now. Okay.
So, I basically was just like, that's not right. Like, I just stayed on the phone with her and I just kept saying things like, so you just want me to put her to bed? Yeah, just put her to bed, call your doctor in the morning, make an appointment. It's like, so, like, I
would have been like, where did you go to nursing school?
Yeah, exactly.
What was your GPA? When your parents talk about you to other people, do they seem proud? I really need to figure out who you are right now. So, yeah. Oh,
so needless to say, I don't recommend our ER to too many people. But so after about 5 minutes of that, she said, just a second. And she was gone for a little bit. And then she came back on the phone and she said, actually, we need you to bring her in immediately. And we've called an ambulance to take you to Children's Hospital.
Actually, I've spoken to someone who knows what they're talking about, and they'd like you to come to the hospital.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Did you later find out that you were talking to like a person who cleans the hospital who picked up the phone by mistake or something like that? Or was there a guy there fixing the vending machine or something?
There was really no explanation for it.
Fascinating. That's wonderful. Okay, so
anyway, we get there. She's not in DKA, thank goodness. Mm-hmm. We caught it early. So they sent us to Children's, and we were in Children's we spent one night there, and then they came in and said, okay, we think you're ready to go home. And I just died. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I was planning on just, staking out a permanent residence here.
I'll tell you that when my first kid was born, my son Cole, the nurse came in the room like that night, after everything had, kind of settled in, and leaves the baby with us in this little rolling bassinet, and she goes to leave. I'm like, where are you going?
Yeah,
and I said, look, you don't know us that well, but we probably killed this kid inside of like 3 days, and not on purpose. And she's like, no, you'll be fine. It's natural to feel, and of course it is natural to feel that way, but once you hear the diabetes, like that feeling, I know for me, was like 100-fold. I was like, wow, no. Oh, wait a minute. So now this is a year ago. What kind of technology did they give you going out the door? How were you supposed to manage day-to-day?
Yeah, we were on MDI. We were just carb counting, and we were on Lantus and Novolog leaving the hospital.
Okay.
So.
Wow, that's a lot. And how did you find the first few months to be? I mean,
it was awful. Nothing short of the worst time of our lives. I mean, it was terrible. We had a really, really rough start.
How so? What made it so rough?
Well, her blood sugars were just completely ridiculous. Like, I guess what maybe works with, I felt like we were kind of given like a blanket, like, this is what we typically do with kids when they're diagnosed. Well, Emerson was 1, and what they typically do with kids that maybe are 10, 11, 12, that wasn't going to work for Emerson, but I feel like we were kind of given the same protocol. So we came home and her blood sugars were just through the roof. I mean, like crazy, crazy high all the time. And I was calling every day, like, hey, her blood sugar's 500 again. Like, hey, her blood, and they were telling us to dose after meals, which, I mean, I understand the premise of that. Like, when you're, such a little kid, like, you don't know, but that it wasn't healthy.
Yeah.
And they were telling us, they they gave us a list of these are free snacks that she can have. There's nothing, if food crosses Emerson's lips, she's getting insulin. Like, if she's going to eat a rock, I'm giving her insulin.
Yeah, it was like that. And is it still like that? Does a lot of stuff affects her no matter what?
She is super, super, super sensitive.
Okay.
So that was hard. And we had a group of, like, the nurse, like, we didn't have an endo. Like, we never saw just like one doctor, and they kind of kept pushing our appointments back and bouncing us around to different doctors. They were like really understaffed at the time. So when all of our changes were made by nurses, and they had a team of 3 nurses, and it would just be random, whoever, would get back to you with the emails or the phone calls. So I didn't feel like there was very much consistency, and no one was really kind of tracking what was going on over time. And it was really frustrating and really stressful, which we ultimately ended up changing to a different endocrinologist, which we love now. But
and were they able to help you answer some of those questions about the blood sugars and how they got so high? Or let me ask you this, I guess. Then are you still having those difficulties with our blood sugars, or have you figured that stuff out?
We're not. Well, to a way lesser degree. It's still type 1 diabetes, but our days are much smoother now. No, we actually ended up my coping mechanism is information. So I was just like, I was reading every book I could find. I was just researching as much as I could. And the nurses actually, when I would call with these, concerns about these high blood sugars, we started Dexcom about 4 weeks after she was diagnosed. We were still doing MDI. And that was just on my own. Like, I called Dexcom and was like, what do I have to do to get a Dexcom?
Exactly. Because if anyone needs it, it's got to be you, right?
Right. So, and the nurses were telling me, we don't really have a lot of kids on I just don't understand. Anyway, they were not up to speed with the CGM stuff whatsoever. So when I would call
I'm sorry, Ashley, you mean the woman on the phone who wanted you to go to sleep when her blood sugar was 600? She didn't know anything about a glucose monitor?
Oh, this is another hospital still in Arkansas.
Okay.
So this is at our children's hospital. And they, I was just told, well, remember, I would call and say, she's up even still 2-3 hours after breakfast, her blood sugar's still over 400. It's still reading high on the Dexcom. And they would say, well, you really wouldn't know she's going that high if she weren't wearing the Dexcom. We're just really worried.
Hold on, Ashley. Hold on a second. Stop a second. Stop talking. Stop. I'm going to have to laugh for a second. Oh, my God. You would never know you got hit in the hammer if it wasn't for all your pain receptors. If I hit you in the head with a hammer, but you didn't have pain receptors, you'd never even know unless the blood dripped on your hand. Who would? Oh, jeez. I got to get you out of Arkansas. All right, so.
So yeah, she's like, we really are more concerned about where she starts at the next meal, and if she's, somewhat in range. And I'm just like, no, this is not.
No, of course not. That's ridiculous.
So, you asked about if we're, still having the same problems. We actually just had to really, really modify her diet. And I know that's a kind of a hot topic within the type 1 community, because there's a lot of people that feel like, you should be able to eat whatever, everyone else eats, especially kids. But for us personally, it wasn't healthy for Emerson. Her body just, it doesn't handle carbs well at all.
You should do whatever you need to do. I want to stop for a second and just say this blanketly to anyone who's listening. If you don't have type 1 diabetes, your blood sugar is probably 85. Okay, right? For most of the time. I know it's difficult to keep it near where it needs to be, and difficult's not a strong enough word, but for the course of the conversation, it's difficult to do. But if someone's telling you that it's okay that your blood sugar is 150 all day or 200 all night or whatever,
or 500.
You have to go over what the idea of okay is. Because what are they saying to you? Are they saying, listen, I'm afraid you're going to get low. Are you willing to trade life later for life now?
Exactly.
That's a big statement to make. And when they tell you, don't worry about it, we're just worried where she is at her next meal. That's ridiculous. If she eats 3 times a day and is 400 for an extended period of time in between those things, there's nothing. You're not just losing the battle. Like I don't know.
Right,
I don't want to be like a defeatist, but maybe just stop fighting the battle at all.
Yeah.
Like there's a way to understand how insulin works, and once you have that understanding of how insulin works, these spikes don't exist anymore. And for a healthcare provider to tell you that it is okay for your blood sugar to go to 400 as long as it comes back at some point, that person has no feeling.
That's exactly what we were told.
Yes,
yeah.
That person has no feeling for how insulin works or how to utilize it. And I'm so sorry that anybody ever said that to you. And if anyone who's listening has had that said to them, message me personally. Yeah. Although not too many of you, because my wife will be like, what are you doing all day talking to people about their blood sugars? But I would be happy to lend anyone advice that I could. Not advice. By the way, let's go right here, Ashley. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. But if I had something I could say that might help you move in the right direction, I would be thrilled to share that with anybody, because that's nuts. I feel terrible for you that someone told you that. But okay, so you're figuring out, you're modifying the diet a little bit. You get the Dexcom. What's a bad day like to you now? Like, what's a blood sugar that you're like, oh, I can't believe this has happened to us now?
Okay, yeah. Now, if she goes over 140, I'm uncomfortable with that.
Look at Ashley, much better.
So, okay. Things are much improved.
Now, can you imagine a path to where this would have been your initial idea of diabetes? Like, what if someone would have given, like, what information were you able to find on your own that the hospital wasn't able to give you that got you to this 140? And what would have benefited you to hear at the time, do you think? Before Ashley tells us what she thinks would have been beneficial for her to know sooner in diagnosis, let's talk about our sponsor, OmniPod. Now, normally I tell you about OmniPod, tubeless insulin pump, go swimming with it, play sports with it, temp basals, all this great stuff, low A1C. I tell you about all that, then I go to myomnipod.com/demo for more information to get like a free demo pod. There's no obligation. It doesn't cost anything. I usually say all that. This time, I'm going to say something different. So there's this really great software called Gluco that helps you get all your diabetes data together and make more sense of it. Now, Gluco costs money every year. I think there's a $60 fee or something like that to use it. It's this great app and everything. But did you know that if you're an Omnipod user, if you're a current Omnipod user, you get Gluco for free? Omnipod pays for it for you. All you have to do is, you go to myomnipod.com/demo if you don't have the Omnipod to get the Omnipod. But if you do have it, you go to myomnipod.com. There's a tab for the Learning Center. Then you go to download software. And there's everything you need to know about getting Gluco for free. What'd I just say? Free? Are you telling me there's no cost? That's correct, Scott. There's no cost. If you are a current Omnipod user, you get Gluco for free. Now, come on. Free demo pod. And if you decide to get the Omnipod, then Gluco's for free? Cha-ching, baby. Okay, listen. myomnipod.com/demo to try a free no obligation demo to see if you want an Omnipod, which, come on, you're going to want it after you try it. And if you're already an Omnipod user, go to myomnipod.com, help center, download software, get Gluco going for freeze. Let's get back to Ashley and find out what she thinks would have been beneficial to know at diagnosis.
Yeah, I feel like, and I understand this when you're first diagnosed, especially if you have a very small child. Like, I was admittedly a basket case. So I understand that they were probably like, tread lightly in that room, like this girl's on the edge.
They just whispered in each other's ears, don't tell the crazy lady how the insulin works yet. Exactly. You think it might have been that, right?
I just think, so I felt like it was a lot more rainbows and unicorns than was realistic. And it was like, this is going to be your new normal. Like, I'm sorry, like, it's still not, this isn't normal. Like, it's not normal to have to know exactly, every single bite of food that your child takes and give them a shot. Like, it's not normal. It's never going to be normal. And just a lot of nothing has to change. They can still eat all of their favorite food. You can still do everything the way you did it. Like, I don't know, for me and for us personally, that was it was just misleading. And I wish someone would have just been very real with me and said, look, like, you can't eat bananas anymore. Like, she don't ever buy a banana again because that's not good for her.
But see, now I wish someone would have said to you, look, a banana, as an example, is not going to be an easy thing. You're not going to just peel it when you want to, eat it, give yourself some insulin, it's all going to work out. You are probably going to have to pre-bolus for a banana 15 minutes ahead of time, and you're probably going to have to adjust the basal rate and increase it for a while. And, there's all these other things you're going to need to do, because I actually think, Ashley, that you'll find a way to accomplish the banana, as an example, at some point, but not without all the caveats that go with it. It's you know what I mean? Like, you can't eat a banana and 15 minutes later give someone insulin. That's not going to work.
Right, exactly. Right. Yes. And so we were like, I was probably about a month in, I called the nurses and I was like, okay, like, I'm going to pre-bolus, like, just kind of giving you guys a heads up. Like,
hey, guess what? I don't know if they have this at your medical school, but I got the internet here at the house.
Yeah, exactly.
And, oh boy.
So I started doing that. I would give her a shot, before, like, about 15 minutes before she ate. And I would maybe cover like 20 carbs with that. And then I would give her another shot when she was done eating, if she ate more. And even with the pre-bolusing with her, and I think when you're just talking about a 1-year-old with such tiny blood volume, I mean,
it's hard. It really
20
is.
or 30 carbs, that adds up quick. You can get there quick, and it can just affect their blood sugar so much. Like, still, I mean, Emerson's 2.5, and 1 carb will raise her blood sugar about 50 points today. So, I mean, you can imagine we're feeding her 20, 30 carbs a meal, and we're dosing afterward. Like, it was just...
That was not going anyway.
And I don't know, what was your experience like with Arden when you guys started? I don't know how far into it you were when you got a Dexcom and were actually able to see everything that was going on.
Maybe 3 years in we had Dexcom, 3 or 4 years.
Okay, yeah.
And we didn't have an insulin pump till she was 5. So I went 3 years without an insulin pump.
Wow.
And it was just, I mean, it's like you describe. It was, you get stuck with all the little problems. It's a little kid. I don't know exactly how much they're going to eat. And even if I could talk myself into believing, you know what, I do see she eats about the same, with these meals. There's still the fear of like, well, what do I do if I need her to eat and she won't? Like, that fear freezes you a little bit. She can't
be reasoned with. She's 1 year old.
Right. Like, hey, I need you to drink this now. Daddy gave you too much insulin. And she looks, and she stares back and she's like, I'm not drinking that. And then what do you do, right? And so plus you're doing MDI, so there's no ability to manipulate the basal rate. And, so there's that. Like, last night's a super example. We had a pump change last night prior to bed. And I changed the pump, and she's like, I'd like to have popcorn before I go to bed. And I was like, yeah, okay. And so I popped some popcorn. I gave her the popcorn. I'm bolusing like crazy, giving her way more insulin than the popcorn and the blood sugar needs because it's a new pump. I'm not sure how quick it's going to kind of start working right. And so I pushed it pretty hard. And a couple of hours after the last bolus, she was 110 diagonal down, and I was like, ooh, this is going to start running on me. And I shut her basal off for an hour, and she leveled out at 75. And I was like, ooh, I completely win. I win. Yeah. And then she drifted back up to like 96 and stayed there until she's been growing again. So until about 3:30 in the morning when something hit her and it jumped up to 160. And I had to push it back down again. But prior to all this technology and this great stuff that I'm using right now, I was just like, insulin, test. I'd stare at her a lot, wondering
I wonder
if she's high or low.
Yeah, people would ask me like, well, how's your day going? And literally, I would be like, I don't even know how to answer that until like the next check. Like, when I check her in an hour, I'll tell you if I'm having the worst day of my life or if it's a great day. Like, I don't know.
I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on the podcast or not, but I use timers a lot because I would test at increments, right? And I would like most people are like, oh, the doctor would tell you bolus and then test 3 hours later. We think that's how long your insulin action was. So I was like, no, I want to know what happens right after dinner.
Right.
So I would test like on the hour. It got to the point where I stopped setting a timer because I was a human 1 hour timer. Like you could at any point in the day look at me and go, Scott, I want you to tell me an hour from now. And I could hit it. It was ridiculous. I could hit it within a minute or two. I'd be like, I think it's been an hour. You know, like, so.
Someone hand me a Lancet.
I know it's an hour test. And it was really, I'm not even making that up. That got to the point where I was worried about myself. I've becoming a Rain Man of how long an hour is. You know, this is not a marketable skill I can get out into the world. And so, and then, you know, the pump came, and then I kind of taught myself more about the basal rates and how to kind of work with those. But I still was a little scared to give her insulin more than once because people told me that was stacking and that was scary and I shouldn't do that. And then when the glucose monitor came, that's when I started making like wholesale changes. That's when I said to somebody, like, I'm going to start trying different insulins because I don't like the way this one's working. And you know, because I saw all these double arrows up and double arrows down, and I was like, this can't be right. You know, so I changed insulin, and I never, ever, my gosh, ever see double arrows ever. You know, like, awesome. And so it just turns out that one of the insulins was better for her than the other one, you know, so, you know.
And what did you end up switching to and from?
We use, we started with Novolog, and we switched to Apidra.
Okay. So you just find that Apidra works a little faster?
So I hear people say Apidra works faster. And I guess they mean like I guess the onset of it comes quicker for some people.
Yeah.
I don't find Apidra to work any faster or slower than Novolog did for us. I find it to work steadier.
Okay.
So Novolog used to. I just like to say hi to the people at Novo Nordisk where my wife works right now. I'm very sorry. I'm sure Novolog is a fantastic insulin for many, 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 many people, and I know that it is. But for Arden, you would get this like. It would spike, and then if you gave her extra insulin to stop a spike, she'd get ungodly low afterwards. And if you gave her enough that she was stable 3 hours later, she would get ungodly high first. And so that just doesn't happen with the Apidra for Arden. It just works better for her physiology. That's all.
Okay, yeah.
You know.
Well, that's interesting. I don't.
Different stuff for different people.
Is Apidra very commonly used? I guess everyone that I know is either like Humalog or Novolog.
Listen, it's the healthcare industry. Whichever salespeople show up with the best bagels, that's the kind of insulin we're using. Which, by the way, I think is illegal now, and I'm sure people don't do that anymore. But it used to be. You know, listen, going back 20 years ago, the sales rep would come into the doctor's office and say, hey, we have this new medication we'd like to tell you about. Why don't you come to Hawaii so we can show you the presentation? Well, hell, now everybody's getting that medicine. Yeah. So the government figured out that wasn't a good idea, and they stopped that. You can't do that. I don't even think a pharma person can leave a pen anymore with people. Like it's so like that. But the fact of the matter is that some of these companies have become entrenched. And then that's just what doctors hear when they think of Novolog. It's like Kleenex, you know?
Right.
Kleenex is not tissues, but that's how we think of it. You know, so I'm not saying one's better than the other. I'm saying that if you're using an insulin that doesn't appear to be working for you, there are other insulins. You should try them. You know, maybe one of them won't work better, but what's it hurt to give it a shot? And you know, and somebody took me up on that idea recently and said, I went to my doctor and I said I wanted to try a different insulin. They told me no. And I was like, did you tell them you were going to get a different doctor? Or did you say, because I would have said, shut up and pull out your pen and write down what I need you to write down, and I'm going to go try this insulin. Like, what's it hurt you if I try a different insulin? You know, it doesn't make that you have to be persistent sometimes. But so we switched the insulin, and the peaks and the double arrows stopped. I mean, really, like if I see them, I don't even know that I see them once a month.
Yeah, and that's what we are with. I mean, we just you did it with the insulin. We did it with the diet, but it's rare for us actually to see even a diagonal arrow anymore with the way that we eat. So
well, how and I don't want to use the word severe, but how strictly are you not eating carbs? Like what's a day look like for
okay,
Emerson?
So we basically eat like just whole real foods. So tons and tons of vegetables. She eats, meat, chicken, turkey, bacon, whatever, things like that. We eat lots of nuts and seeds for like snack type things. avoid grains. She does not eat any grains at all, any bread, anything like that. I make a lot of breads out of like almond flour and coconut flour. I make muffins. There's a lot of low carb, alternatives that you can make for things. So, when we have muffins, it's like, instead of guessing and like, it's maybe like 30 carbs. Well, like if I'm off 2 or 3 carbs, like I said, 2 or 3 carbs for Emerson raises our blood sugar 50 points each. Like I'm off by 150 points. Like that's a huge deal. So, instead, I make a lot of stuff like that where it's like, okay, this whole muffin is like 3 or 4 carbs. Mm-hmm. And then if I mess up, it's not the end of the world. It's not a disaster. And we limited amounts of fruit, mostly berries because they have more fiber and they're just a little bit easier on blood sugar in general. But
sounds fantastic.
Yeah, so that's kind of what we do, and it's what works for us right now. I should eat like
that, to be honest.
Well, that's actually how I then discovered that I most likely had type 1 as well, because...
Ashley, you want to go to that? Let's go to that now. Okay, so let's everybody take a deep breath, all right?
Phase 2.
So
beta cells are just dropping like flies at our house.
No one's safe. How many people are in your home?
Yeah, it's just my husband. He's the only one left.
He's the only one with the working pancreas. I bet he probably stays away from you guys. He's probably like, you know what? I see this is coming for me next. Okay, so you
check his blood sugar just to make ourselves feel worse about ourselves. He'll eat all these carbs and he's like 85, and I'm like, oh.
He's like, how's that coconut muffin you got there?
Yeah,
looks yummy, guys. Okay, so you are. Let's see, how long has? By the way, as you're talking, there's a little part of my brain that's just going nuts trying to figure out how to title this episode. Where like Emerson's some bad. I don't know, medical advice, or Emerson great muffins. I can't decide how I'm going, but the word Emerson are getting in there somewhere. Anyway, so at what point in Emerson's diagnosis do you start going, hey, something's funky with me?
Okay, so after you have gestational diabetes, they're like, just check your blood sugars every once in a while. Just make sure, like every 3 years, you should have an A1C, because they're like, people are prone to type 2 diabetes. Who have had gestational diabetes, but like you're not going to get type 2 because I just didn't fit any of the markers for someone who would get type 2 diabetes or have insulin resistance causing gestational. It just didn't make sense. Like I literally weigh 100 pounds and like I ran through week 34 of my pregnancy. I ran a marathon like 2 months before I got pregnant. Like it just didn't add up.
Because you know what, in fairness, right? Like it is really one of those oddities is that type 2 diabetes is something that someone immediately thinks in their mind, well, if you're overweight or you're unhealthy or you don't eat well, you're more apt to get type 2 diabetes. And those things obviously don't help you in the fight against type 2 diabetes. But at the same time, plenty of people like you who look like they could go outside and, run forever and never fall over and have never seen a Dunkin' Donuts and that kind of thing. Like plenty of people like you have type 2 diabetes also. So it's not uncommon and it's not unheard of. But it is something. It's not for whatever reason what we think about, as a mass. Yeah. So you get that whole, but still you're dutifully going to check your blood sugar, get your A1C.
Right. So they made me feel, you have absolutely
never going to happen. But we're still going to check.
Yeah.
Right.
So I had checked my blood sugar a few times, like before Emerson was diagnosed, and I was kind of like, that's weird. That's the same numbers as when I was pregnant. Well, I would kind of expect them to be lower since I'm not pregnant anymore, but they were always under what I was given as, under 100 fasting, under 140 2 hours after, which it wasn't until Emerson was diagnosed and I really started researching like a typical non-diabetic adult, their average blood sugar is 83, and I was like, well, I've never, ever seen an 83 on a meter, ever. So if that's the average, supposed to be my average blood sugar, that's not happening. So I was kind of like, Well, so then Emerson gets diagnosed. I'm like, this is just all too much. Obviously, there's something going on. And then we went low carb with Emerson, and my husband eats that way and I eat that way. We kind of did that, out of solidarity with her. We were like, we're not going to have any food in the house that that she can't handle. So that's not good for her. So we cleared out, the kitchen, and we were all eating the same way. And I started checking my blood sugars now that I'm eating pretty real low amounts of carbs, maybe like 10 carbs a meal or so, maybe 15. And my blood sugar's still pretty high 2 hours after I ate. And I'm like, wow, that's weird. So I start checking 1 hour after and start getting some pretty high blood sugars. Not crazy high, but I also wasn't eating carbs.
Yeah, you're a person who's basically chewing on cardboard and their blood sugar is high. And so, right. So this is not expected. Now, you have to tell me, which hospital did you go to eventually?
Yeah. So, we have really great experience with doctors. So I go to just my regular doctor, and I'm like, my blood sugar's high-ish, but he's not an endocrinologist. I mean, he's like, what do you mean by high-ish? And I'm like, well, fasting's like 90s, high 90s. And he's like, that's perfect. And I'm like, okay, but like after I eat, 2 hours after, it's like 135. And he's like, that's perfect. Like, you don't have anything to worry about. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I'm eating like celery. And that's how
I had celery. And again, I have the internet, and I'm pretty sure that that's not perfect. So you and Emerson are real sensitive to carbs then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I mean, me, not near as much so. And I'm still producing insulin, and I'm still, in the honeymoon stage. And so mine is like wildly easier to manage than hers is. It's like, almost feels like it's not even the same.
Well, let me ask you this, because I have so many questions. So, and I can't keep you forever. So, so how do you get the doctor to take you seriously that you think you have diabetes? And
yes.
How does he first tell
you?
I
go in and I'm like, I'm fasting. I want a C-peptide test, and I want my A1C. And it's this general practitioner. He's like, no, I don't know. I'll do your A1C. So he runs an A1C, and it comes back, and it's fairly good. It's 5.1. He's like, you're perfectly fine. And he actually told me, he said, some people's blood is just kind of weird, and some glucose meters just don't really like some people's blood.
I would have said that does not sound technical at all, what you just said. Please, you are doing such a disservice to Arkansas. People already are baselessly joking about us, and you are making it worse. And so, please stop with your some people's blood is different.
I think that's my last terrible story.
Oh my gosh.
So,
you'd be better off literally just going to WebMD. Like, if you needed surgery, you should go to WebMD, find a homeless person, show them how to do the surgery, and let them do it, I think. Honestly, this is terrible. And so, oh my gosh.
That was frustrating.
Some people's blood is different. Well, thank you.
All right. I'm going to get, I've got to get this tested somehow. So we actually went through TrialNet. And so my husband and I both got tested. And of course, my antibodies come back, positive and super high naturally. I'm like, I knew that. So I called the doctor's office and said, look, I came in, and talked to him. I was concerned. Now I've got this test. I've got really high antibodies. Now will he refer me to the endo? So he did do the referral at that point.
How kind.
So from then on, everything's been smooth sailing. Like I actually take Emerson to an adult endocrinologist. So I was just able to see him. And I mean, I had emailed him before, and he's like, yep, like, I'll just see you when I see Emerson. Like,
yeah, you guys can double up. It's like a double date.
You know what to do. Yeah. So everything's been fine after that.
Okay.
Initial
so you have type 1 also now. Are you, and I know you say you're honeymooning still. How long has it been since this has all happened to you?
So I've been on insulin now for about 2 months.
Okay, not long.
And and I'm only taking bolus insulin right now. I'm not on basal.
Okay. So you're using like a pen or something?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So you're trying, obviously, with your diet, you might extend this. You could end up extending this honeymoon for a while.
That's the hope. Yes.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
Plan. So yeah, basically like early insulin treatment and like a low carb diet has been shown in some people to help extend the honeymoon. So yeah, the longer that I can get by,
it's worth a try.
With a simple, mine's simple right now, and Emerson's is super complicated. So I just can't imagine having two super complicated things going on.
Yeah,
so,
sure. Well, okay. So how much has Emerson's type 1 helped you with yours? I'm interested if it has. I put thought into your head there. I'm not certain that it has, but has it helped?
Well, I mean, just the fact that mine probably wouldn't have been caught for a very, very, very long time if I hadn't had to dig so far into, researching what are truly normal blood sugars. And, I wouldn't have known because
Right.
what the doctor was telling me when I was pregnant, under 100, under 140, like, okay, bam, bam, like I'm good. But, so it really kind of woke me up and was like, okay, yeah, your 97 fasting number every morning. Yeah, maybe that's under the cutoff, but it's not normal. Like something's going on. So I feel super lucky that I was just able to catch it so early, and I'm just on these tiny doses of insulin, and it really didn't add like a huge, additional stressor to my life at this point, which is nice because there's enough stress trying to manage a toddler with type 1. So
no, that's incredible. Like I'm glad it didn't kind of come crashing down on you all at once, because you might have actually been the crazy lady that they're whispering about if that would have happened to you. How's your husband with all of it? Is he very involved with Emerson? Like I don't know if you're a working mom or stay at home.
Yeah, I stay at home with her now. I used to teach, but now I stay home with her. So I do the bulk of it just because, I mean, I've heard you say before, like you kind of get, a feel for it, and you kind of just know instinctively, like, I've heard you say, like, you're like, give her a unit. And your wife's like, what? Like, why? It's like, she needs it. I know she does. So I guess one person kind of takes the lead on that, and I'm with her more, but he's definitely involved. He definitely helps with overnight checks and things like that, and pump site changes. And we're the luckiest parents in the whole world. I think we're the only parents that when I say, Emerson, it's pump change day, she starts jumping up and down and clapping and says, yay, pump change.
This is fantastic. I love this. This is better than the Wiggles were, and which she would have missed by 10 years, but nevertheless. So pump. Okay, what kind of pump are you using?
She is on the and&nbsp.
Okay. And you're using a CGM also, right? The Dexcom?
Yes, she has Dexcom, yes.
How much of what you do is based off of the Dexcom in a day?
Everything. I would not be able to do the diet that we do with her, with eating low carb and how we keep her blood sugars in line. That would be completely impossible without the Dexcom for us. We do things kind of differently. I pre-bolus her for the carbs that she's going to eat in a meal, and then I watch the Dexcom. And usually she doesn't, if I've done it correctly and I've waited the right amount of time and all of that, I won't see much movement from the carbs. And then about an hour and a half to 2-ish hours after she's eaten, her blood sugar will start to increase from the protein that she's eaten, because since we eat so few carbs, we actually convert the protein that we eat into the rest of the glucose that our body needs. So I'll watch the Dexcom really, really closely, and when I see that start to go up, I'll check her, do a finger stick, make sure she's really going up, and then I dose her to cover the protein that she's eaten as well. And I wouldn't be able to do that without the Dexcom.
Yeah.
So,
do you ever use temp basals to address the protein?
We have tried that. We've tried combo bolusing. We've tried doing temp basals. And I think it's just kind of experimental for everyone. But what works for us is just to go ahead and do a separate bolus at that time. And it just kind of matches up with the protein conversion into glucose. It's not super fast, like, when you eat carbs. It's quick, but it's not insanely fast.
That's why I was wondering about it being something maybe you could do with basal, because
but it's a little faster than we can cover with just like basal or a combo bolus. Like, it kind of needs to be all of that insulin all at once working in her. But it's slow enough moving to where I can wait and see the rise, and then I can bolus it, and it can pretty much catch up with it and just kind of even her out.
Let me say this to you, because I have, over the last week or so, since I've posted episode 63 and 64. They're with Dana Lewis and Scott Lyman.
Yes, right? I listened to those. Amazing.
Right. The husband and wife who made their own artificial pancreas, yes. Right? And I think it was actually more the conversation I had with Scott that started making me like just want to think about the basal even more, like because we kept talking about how, you know, with an artificial pancreas, like it just increases basal and it decreases basal, right. But it knows when to do it prior to when it needs to be done, so that the basal rate, because obviously insulin it's a different amount of time in everybody to work, right? Like it could take 15 minutes, it could take 20 minutes, it could take a half an hour in somebody, like who knows? You know, that's right. What makes people's pre-boluses all different. But so sometimes people don't think of it that way. Like if you set a new basal rate, like increase it for a half an hour, your blood sugar doesn't magically start being affected by the basal rate. Now, if it takes 15 minutes for it to affect you, it's not going to start working for 15 minutes. But the artificial pancreas would know to have done it 15 minutes before that. And I just started thinking like, wow, I'm going to try harder, like with the basal rates, because it seems to me like there's a secret in there to learn. You know what I mean? And I kind of want to learn it. I want to learn it before somebody makes an artificial, before I get my OmniPod artificial pancreas, like before that happens. Like I want to see, like, I want to figure it out for myself. Like that seems like the next step to me. And I don't want to wait 2 years until somebody brings something to market, because there was something that Scott said to me, and I think they both actually mentioned in their different episodes, was that it's possible that when your insulin pump company comes to market, they may come to market with the idea of keeping your blood sugar at 140 is pretty good.
Right.
And I was like, oh, I never thought of that. I was like, I wouldn't want that. Like like that's not what I would be shooting for. So I really want to try to figure that out. Actually, and I don't know, like it sounds like you'll figure it out too. Like it's something you're thinking about. But how do you know something's going to happen before it happens? And the answer is, if the artificial pancreas can figure it out, then there are indicators that tell you,
right.
And the way Scott was describing that they don't use any special data in their DIY artificial pancreas. They use the same data that you and I see on our Dexcoms. And I'm like, damn, I could figure that out probably. So.
Yeah, I agree. Dexcom's huge. And a lot of people use it kind of as like a safety net, like for lows, and I feel like that's totally underutilizing, its potential. Like you said, I think there's a lot that we can learn from, watching it and looking at the data. And
if anyone who's listening, if that Dexcom, you're just using it to save yourself from having a seizure, way underutilizing it.
Right.
And also, please, for those of you who have the high threshold set, like at 300, stop that, because that doesn't help you either. Like you have to know when your blood sugar is going up, not know when it's already so high it's going to take 3 hours for you to do something about it. And so, like, where do you have yours set? Where's your high threshold set at?
We have it set at 140.
Oh, I like that. That's a good answer.
And then we have her low at 80, and it gives us a little time to respond. We feel like if she drops below that, but
that's where Ardens are.
So you do 80. What do you do for your high?
140, 80 and 140. This summer, my goal is to go 70 and 130.
Okay.
But I'm going to wait for the school season to stop.
Yeah, so you're with her more.
Yeah, just so I can figure it out, because 70. Like I'll have to tell you, Arden was 74 for a long time. 2 nights ago. And I was like, well, this is great. Like, I really like this at 74. Like, this is perfect. And 74 not falling, obviously, and no,
right.
But that's like today at school, for instance, was another example. She's like, she texted me and she kind of caught me off guard. I was out and she's like, hey, it's lunch. And I was like, ooh, damn. Like, usually I pay attention to what her blood sugar is about 10 minutes before she's going to tell me we're bolusing for lunch, because what if she's 75 at that point? Like, it's going to be hard for me to pre-bolus and things like that. Right. So sometimes I'll say to her, like, could you take a tablet now or something to try to move it a little so that, but she caught me. She was like, hey, it's time to pre-bolus. And her blood sugar was 99. And I was like, okay. I said, so I want you to, because she gets like a bump, no matter how much you bolus at lunch, I see a bump at like an hour and a half later at school. So I was like, all right, so set a temp basal. I increased it 70% for like 2 hours. And then I said, and then we're going to do 8 units of insulin for lunch, but just do like 60% of it now. And then the other 60%, have it go in over a half an hour, because I couldn't give her 8 units at a 99 blood sugar. She wasn't going to eat for 15 minutes. Like I could do it at home like that, but I'm not going to do it at school where she might, I don't know,
get distracted.
Some teacher might stop her in the hallway and be like, hey, Arden, how was your softball game this weekend? And then 10 minutes later, I'm like, I'm texting her going, are you eating food? But nevertheless,
are you passed out?
Yeah, hello. So, but nevertheless, we do the pre-bolus 12:25, and at 1:05, she was 74 and steady. And I'm like, this is fantastic. Because now I know all the food's in already, and now the food and the insulin are fighting with each other at 74 instead of it,
That's awesome. Whatever. I just can't, that blows my mind. Like, I can't imagine a day. And I wonder, like, have you seen a big change in Arden's ability to, like, handle carbs as she's gotten bigger? Or, like, I just can't imagine Emerson, like, eating a meal that required 8 units and not going to 600.
And I get your question, and the reason I'm not able to answer it is because I didn't have any of this technology when Arden was 2 years old.
Right.
But I would say this, that a lot of people are doing this successfully. Like Scott Librand said that there's a child your daughter's age using their DIY like artificial pancreas, and so they're keeping that child's blood sugar that low. I should probably find that person. Listen, if that person's listening right now, send me an email. I want to have you on the podcast. But so like the idea is, I would think yes. Like, I would think that the difference, not that I think you should change your child's diet. I think it sounds like you guys are going to live 200 years. But like, I'm going to be dead in a month. But you're going to be going forever. But what I'm saying is that I don't know that you couldn't do it. I just think that there's a lot of courage involved in that decision. You know what I mean? Like 8 units of insulin is a lot for Arden.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And I don't count her carbs, by the way. So I just I just make her a lunch, and I'm like, that's probably going to be about 8 carbs.
Yeah, you're a braver man.
Yeah. And so because I lost you for a second, and I'm sure.
Oh.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I lost my headphones for a second. They're back. Sorry. What I can say is this, is that if I gave her 8 units today and she got low and stayed low, then we would have addressed it. And, I put something on my Facebook page yesterday, and God knows when this will go up, so please don't go back looking for it on the Facebook page. It's probably a month and a half ago. But it was just like Arden's graph after pancakes. And I was like, hey, look, here's pancakes. You just kind of have to be bold with insulin, blah, that kind of thing. And people were like, I don't understand how you did that. And one guy said, what did you do when she hit like 70, 90 minutes afterwards? And I said, well, actually, we have peaches in the house, and Arden wanted peaches. So I was really heavy-handed with the pancakes, thinking that if I miss, I'll use the peaches. So then I get the double bonus. She gets to eat the peaches as a snack, and I can use the peaches to save a low blood sugar if it's coming. And then another person came back into the thread and was like, I don't understand. What are you saying? And I'm like, I'm saying I used too much insulin on purpose so that my daughter could have peaches 90 minutes later. And I think that fried someone's brain, but that's very, and so now the great thing about doing that is it really only got her down to 70. So then I can look back and see what I did before and say, look, if the peaches weren't there and I just did maybe a half a unit less, this would have been a 90 blood sugar after pancakes.
Right.
And so I say it all the time. I'll say it again. If you don't give yourself these experiences, you're not going to get any of the data back. If you don't get the data back, you won't know how to make a better experience the next time. So, and again, I should say, we have a continuous glucose monitor. I can see when my daughter's blood sugar randomly falls or jumps up, and I would probably not be that bold without it, so I'm being honest. But at the same time, my kid ate, I'm not talking about a pancake yesterday. She had I would say they were 8 inches around, and she maybe had 4 of them.
Oh.
And she weighs like 78 pounds, and her blood sugar never went over 160.
Well, that's impressive. Well done.
Thank you. I'm pretty sure if I ate pancakes, my blood sugar is going over 160. So I didn't feel too bad about it. And by the way, next time, I would probably do a couple different things and stack some smaller boluses, and I probably could have kept that 160 out, because there's a great blog on the front of my website at ardensday.com. It's called Anatomy of a High Carb Breakfast, and it actually shows you during French toast and I don't know if you've ever seen it, French toast and fresh fruit and like all this stuff.
Yes, I've seen that. My head was exploding. Right. Like, oh my God.
Like, here's where some more went in. And when you go look at it, there's nothing scientific about it. It was all me standing there going, another unit, up the basil, go ahead and have the grapes now. Like, it was sort of like that. But that's what the artificial pancreas will do at some point, like, right? So I don't know.
That's so funny. We do that, except we do that on like the most minuscule scale that you can possibly imagine.
You'll build on that, though.
Another 0.05 to cover it.
Yeah, but actually, don't you think you'll just keep taking in that information and build on it until one day you just look at your husband and you're like, we are eating pizza. And I don't mean like pizza made with coconut oil. Like, we're going out and by the way, I don't know how good the pizza is in Arkansas, but maybe it would be worth coming north for. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how the pizza or the healthcare. By the way, let's say I'm sure there are plenty
more than one reason to move north.
I'm 100% certain there are a ton of great doctors in Arkansas. And I'm just joking based on.
We just had a crazy experience.
I've never been to Arkansas. I don't know what I'm talking about. If you live in Arkansas and are listening to the podcast, I'm joking. Please don't come after me. It's just a joke. But you have to admit, Ashley had some pretty terrible medical advice.
I know. Yeah, it was crazy.
Now, Ashley, here's the thing. We're at an hour already. Your delightfulness spilled right over into 60 minutes like it was nothing.
Well, it's been great talking to you.
Thank you. Is there anything we missed that you did want to talk about?
No, I just enjoy listening to all the different experiences that people have had and the different ways to manage. And I just love that you're giving people the chance to share, because then people like me are listening and they're like, oh, okay, I think I can try that. And it's just great, because there's not a lot of, I don't know, like, I've met one other type 1 person that lives in our city, so you don't get to just talk about these things and what works for you and what you can try. So
well, first of all, thank you, and I'm so happy that you reached out. And I haven't said this in a while on the podcast, so let me say it. If you'd like to be on the podcast, Ashley just sent me a note, and that's what you should do too, because if you're listening, or if you listened before and you've heard someone else's story that's made you feel more comfortable or normal or given you an idea, then just know that person didn't come on the podcast that day with the intention of doing that for you. And when you come on, you'll do it for somebody, and you won't have to plan for it either. It's just through the conversation, that's how things like this come out. So if you've heard Ashley say something today that was really valuable to you, just know that she and I did not plan anything that we were going to talk about. That is the secret to my podcast, which is I put almost no effort into it. And so I like to think of it like just you and I on the phone and people getting to listen, And so I appreciate you reaching out. And Emerson has an adorable name, and you were fantastic. And you know what? The one thing you said that I really want to commend you on is that when you changed the diet in the house for her, that you changed it for everybody. Like, that's because as an adult, it's difficult to make like a change like that for yourself. So that is really commendable, because you could literally be the person who's like, hey, Emerson, on your way to get your almonds, grab mommy's Doritos, and it's so cool, because
I think it speaks a lot more to my husband than to me, because I was kind of like, oh, my blood sugar is kind of iffy, like, what's going on? But my husband's pancreas is fully functional, and he could just be eating whatever his little heart desired, and he chooses to support us and eat the same way that we do. So
he's totally to be commended. That is seriously, that's wonderful. And now, listen, I don't know, at lunchtime when he's at work, he's probably in the car with a dozen donuts, and he's just like, oh my God, this diabetes, I haven't seen a crawler in forever.
I'm like, what do I smell on your breath?
What is that I smell? Huge thank you to Ashley for coming on and sharing her story. I think you agree. She was delightful. I'm always delightful, but she was really delightful. Thank you, OmniPod, for sponsoring this episode and making the Juicebox Podcast possible. Go to my&nbsp.com/demo to try it yourself. And if you're an OmniPod user already, don't forget that Gluco is free for you. Go to my&nbsp.com to learn. Go to my&nbsp.com, go to the Learning Center, click on Download Software, and the next thing you know, you'll be Glucoing for free. Glucoing, not an adjective. I just made that up. I will see you soon. Next week, in fact. Maybe tomorrow. I don't know. Time's meaningless. It's a podcast. Goodbye.